The Zone Coverage Podcast Network.
Welcome back for another edition of Midwest Swing Pod. I'm your host, Mike Berardino, along with Tom Schreier. We have a special guest here as we head into the Major League postseason, and October will be gripping the nation here with a variety of matchups. Baseball time really just takes over. And that's Trevor Plouffe, longtime third baseman, former Twin, most recently Philadelphia Philly. Trevor, welcome to the show.
Mike and Tom, thanks for having me on. It's a pleasure.
All right. This is cool. But the first thing I think we should start with, Tom's going to get to the beer talk soon, because Tom's been monitoring that Twitter account, and you're doing something pretty cool, and Tom's much more schooled on modern craft beer options. I just drink them. I don't know what I'm drinking, but I drink them. But you guys will talk a little beer in a second. But let's talk Joe Mauer first, because you were a teammate of his for parts of 7 seasons, I believe, and really got to know Joe on and off the field. Did you get a chance to see, and I think you did, you posted a tribute on Twitter at Trevor Plouffe to Joe, but what did you think from afar, the way I experienced it in a new job here down in Indiana, but what did you think of the way Target Field embraced Joe Mauer on the final day of 2018?
I think they did a great job. A guy like Joe, what he's done for the community and the organization in general, I mean, he should be applauded the way he was. I mean, he's a locally grown kid that got drafted first overall. I mean, he's had all the pressures that you can't even imagine, and he's come through and, basically put together a Hall of Fame career, led the organization to, a number of playoff appearances. I mean, the guy's just done it all while being like a model citizen and one of the nicer guys you're ever going to meet. He's a special person, definitely one of the best teammates I ever played for. And it was nice to see Target Field come give him that ovation, then to send him off as a catcher, catching that last pitch. I thought that was really cool.
Saying too, Rick Renneria making it clear to his team that you're just going to take a pitch. You're going to let this happen within the course of the regular season. That as it finished out, that made it possible, and just a nice surprise too for people to see that. And for Joe, now Joe got emotional. You saw him get emotional there a couple of times pregame with his daughters, and of course stepping into the box each time, and he should have that opportunity. A lot of people from afar like to, and critics of Mauer, he had plenty of critics over the years who just wanted to look at the contract, would try to portray him as kind of a robot, baseball robot, didn't bring a fire to the game necessarily at times. Those were the knocks. You know the real Joe Mauer behind the scenes, Trevor. Do you have a story you like to tell about the Mauer, the man, the competitor, maybe where you may have seen some of those emotions behind the scenes?
Yeah, of course. First, he did. People in Minnesota are great. It's an easy place to play. I don't think it's the media, even with you there, Mike, wasn't too difficult. But he did get a bad rap later in his career because he was paid to be a catcher, and concussions forced him out, put him at first base. And now, when his offensive numbers started to decline a little bit, his power went down. That doesn't play at first base like it plays a catcher. People started to get upset about his contract, but that guy earned every penny of that contract. You get paid in the big leagues for what you've done. That's just how the system's set up. And he was one of the best players in the game at the time he signed that extension. And like I said, I think he earned it all. Joe will never admit that kind of got to him sometimes at Target Field when, people were upset that he wasn't performing at, the rate that maybe his contract says he should. But he was always just very genuinely nice and ready to go. I mean, I've seen a lot of guys prepare for games. Jim Thome being maybe the guy that prepared the most for the game at the end of his career because he needed to. But Joe was right up there too. He had his routine. He was a model of consistency. And yes, or he wasn't that fiery guy in the clubhouse, a vocal leader the way Torrey Hunter was, or even Dozier. But, having that guy that shows the young guys, hey, if you want to be good in the big leagues, you have to prepare and have a routine. That was Joe, and I think that was what he brought to the table that a lot of people didn't see, is that it looks so easy for him, and people call him a natural, but he put the work in too.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more in terms of, a lot of times the guys who in any sport who can glide and make it look easy, don't have to dive necessarily. Mauer threw his body around even post-concussion at first. Those guys who make it, the easier you make it look, the more the critics come out and say, the effort's not there. Well, maybe they don't need to show the blatant on the surface effort as always, because they're there a step ahead of you or whatever. They're just playing the game at a different level. Now, speaking of a different level, I'd like Tom now to step in here and follow up with a little recent endeavor that made just kind of off the cuff on Twitter. But Trevor Plouffe knows a lot about craft beer. He's a connoisseur, it would appear, and I think he's a great follow at Trevor Plouffe regardless. But this thing you're doing recently, there's a photo of the beer. There's a quick review. Olivia gets involved in this sometimes. First of all, Trevor, tell the people what your goal is with this, and then Tom, go get them.
I don't necessarily have a goal with any of my social media posts right now. I'm just kind of having fun with it. I do want to go touch back on Joe, though, just about people not seeing the passion out of him. He was always very careful to show that on the field. I've heard and seen him be upset at the field quite frequently. He just takes it down into the tunnel and does it and gets it out of his system and comes back and plays the game because he's a professional, and that's what he would do. So if people are wondering if he ever did get upset or anything like that, he did. Yeah, and he was emotional, but he just chose to hide it from the fans and the public because he wanted to be that model of consistency. That was his thing. So.
Yeah, and I feel like we saw, Mike, you can speak to it a little bit. I feel like we saw it a little bit just as media this year and try to portray that accurately, that there was just such disappointment. Final year of the contract, he had a really good year last year. They made the playoffs. I think there was an expectation even among the most maybe cynical or negative people that they would build off of that. And it was tough to see, especially given that it was such like a 180 from, I guess, what I expected from this year. And I think he went out as well as he could, and the Twins did a great job. But I think almost anyone would say they would love to have, had a better season. And it was interesting seeing that. Just a lot of raw emotion from him this year.
Yeah, and only one team wins it at the end. So there's going to be a bunch of teams disappointed every year. But I understand that Minnesota's, they deserve a good baseball team. They got it last year. They got at least a taste of it with the wild card game. So, hopefully they'll rebound next year.
Well, last one on Mauer, since it's really it was Bill Mauer week. It was a tremendous run of appreciation. But there's going to be talk in 5 years if he does not sign somewhere next year, and he made it clear he doesn't want to play anywhere else. Hall of Famer or not for you, Trevor?
It's a tough one for me. I think he is a Hall of Famer. I just don't know how the voters really view things. A lot of them are numbers based, and he didn't reach that 3,000 hit plateau, obviously, but there has never been a better all-around catcher in the game. He won 3 batting titles and he won 3 Gold Gloves, and he's an elite. He was an elite catcher. And did he do it long enough at the position to warrant being in the Hall of Fame? I think so, but I don't know how the voters will react to that. We got another guy in Minnesota who's going through the same thing, Tony Oliva, just didn't necessarily play long enough. So,
no.
If you're asking me, I think he is a Hall of Famer.
Yeah, and I think many of my media brethren in the BBWAA feel the same way. I'm not sure he's first ballot, but even Avigio had to wait a couple of years, and others, Tim Raines had to wait many years, Andre Dawson many years. I think in the end, because you'll look at what he did as the period of time, the peak period of time as a catcher. I do think he's got a pretty strong case. Career wins above replacement are in the mid-50s. He's in a good neighborhood there. It's not a lock, but I think he's got a good shot. All right, Tom, talk to Trevor.
Yeah, these are the hard-hitting questions, of course.
I love this. Yeah, the beers. This is where the money's at.
Yeah, I think that just to point this out. So I believe he came up in 10. The Surly Bill passes in 11. And it's just funny how it's just kind of exploded since then and become almost kind of part of the bar scene here. Trevor, do you have particular breweries that you like? Were you able to see that evolution? Was that something that maybe got you into this or played some role in your desire to check out craft beers?
I mean, if you ask me where my favorite breweries are in Minnesota, I got a few. Surly is definitely one of them. Fulton is another great place to go. Another one of my buddies is at Unmapped, which they just did a collaboration with Dan Gladden. He has a hop farm. They use his hops, they harvested them, and they're making a wet hop beer from it. So that's a pretty cool situation going on there. But I did get to see the Surly transformation. I took a tour there, I believe 2011 or 12 at the Brooklyn Park location.
Yeah, the older place, yeah.
Yeah, so I did that, got to meet Omar, and then my friend Spencer, who's now at Fulton, he was one of the brewers there at the time. Love what they were doing, love the product, but then just really got to know the people there, and I've made some really good friends. Still talk to these guys to this day. And then, to see it go from where they're at, and they're still brewing some of their one-off batch stuff there, but to the new facility, I mean, it's a destination brewery. People are going to travel to go to that brewery, and it's really something special.
Yeah, I think you hit on the two big ones here. How does the beer scene here compare to kind of what you've had at other major league stops or your other favorite breweries throughout the nation?
I think it's a really good scene. I mean, nowadays, craft beer is reaching such a level that you can almost go to any city and find good quality craft beer. Along those lines, the more breweries that are being opened, sometimes you're going to get flooded with mediocre beer. So you really have to be careful where you're going because, craft beer is expensive, and a lot of people, go spend their hard-earned money on, 4 pints for $20, and it might be, not so great beer. I recommend trying to try out the beers, find what you like before you spend your money on it instead of splurging, because there is some mediocre beer out there, that's come along with this wave of breweries across the country. But Surly is definitely one that hits the mark. They're readily available, at liquor stores, supermarkets, then you can also get it all at tap places. They're one of those ones that has kind of been able to cross over and keep their quality and consistency at the level they want to.
What are your favorite cities? I know Colorado's known for it. I know Portland has a pretty good scene. You said it's kind of all over, but what would be your Mount Rushmore, a few that stand out for you in terms of craft brew scenes?
I think Chicago has a really good concentration of breweries there where they're not too spread out, and there's a lot of high quality beer coming out of there. San Diego's another place, that's kind of the craft beer mecca.
Yeah.
There's just a ton of places there. I feel like that's a lot of quantity down there because there's so many breweries. And then you have the hipsters in New York brewing really good beer. I haven't been to Portland. That's an old school beer town. There's just so many places. The Los Angeles beer scene, which is, what I'm dealing with now, it's really taken off the last couple of years. There's some heavy hitters out here that are doing big things. But if I had to pick one, I would say Chicago.
Interesting.
I'd like to ask about when you mentioned Surly. Glen Perkins had his own little line, a beer called Cut Down. I don't know if you've tried it, but Trevor, is it anything in the works, or would that be a dream come true for you to have a beer line named after you, a model of beer? And maybe we can make this happen right here on the show?
Yeah, I've talked to Josh, who's a brewer there. I've talked to him a little bit about it. I know Glenn did his Cut Down IPA. I didn't get a chance to taste it, but he said he liked it. And interestingly enough, Glenn, who brews beer all the time now, he actually built my system that I use to homebrew with. We built it together in the Target Field clubhouse in the equipment area. We took a couple weeks, and we built all the tanks and everything. And he'll say that he got me into brewing, and I'll say I got Glen into craft beer. I got him drinking good stuff. He was not into that. And then we played together in Rochester. I started introducing him to different styles, and he's taken it and ran with it now. And but I would definitely love to do that. I've actually tried to set some of these breweries in LA up with Surly to do some collaboration type stuff, and I think one of those is going to come to fruition shortly.
Wow! So we'll wait for that to drop. That's pretty cool.
I'll let you know. Yeah, I'll let you know.
All right. Well, we'll have you back when you debut that. How strong is the knowledge of craft beer around baseball? You know a lot of baseball players. You guys find yourselves talking about it, or are you in a minority of people who take it this seriously and really, become well versed in it?
I think I'm in the minority as far as how much I pay attention to it and the people that I've met here. But I mean, everyone enjoys beer and baseball.
Sure.
Unfortunately, a lot of guys are into the Bud Light, Coors Light, stuff like that. And they are sponsors of MLB. So I always try to get guys, hey, you like the Pilsner, you like the Miller Lite, here, try this out instead. Or, hey, you like the lager, try this out. But I've always been that guy to try to help people. I would say it's still minimal, the awareness in the major leagues. But there are some people. There's definitely some people that get into it.
All right, so we don't have Trevor all day. We told him we'd keep him to a certain amount of time because he's a busy man, and he's in his off season now. But a couple things before we let you go, real quick. You had a chance, I believe, with the Lehigh Valley Iron Pigs to pitch this year, and you got a couple of outs. So how cool was that? And take us through it. Who did you get, and who did you? What was that like? And how were you as good as Drew Butera?
I've always wanted to, and Molitor would never let me. So it was at the end of the season, kind of this year, and we had a situation where we're going to bring a position player in. And I went to the mound, and I thought my coach, our manager, had pointed to me, but he didn't. So I kind of was happy, and then he told me it wasn't me, and I got this disappointed look on my face, and I think he saw that, and he kind of was like, you know what, all right. So I ripped my
This is Gary Jones.
Off.
Gary Jones here. Yeah.
Gary Jones, yeah. And I went out there. I didn't want to be that try hard guy that really tries to amp up and throw as hard as I can. I didn't want to be that guy. So I was kind of cruising there. I think I was sitting around 84, 85.
All right.
But the problem was it wasn't below hitting speed. It was right in these guys' wheelhouse, and my ball was straight as an arrow. So I had a few guys take some big hacks off me. Once that happened, I started flipping up some curveballs. But I got out.
Curveballs.
I got video of it, and it's, I was talking to my wife after. She's like, I've never heard you this happy. I was like, it was really special. He brought me back, and it was cool, man. Something I'll never forget for sure.
Well, because you were a big pitcher in high school too, right?
Yeah, I think I'll need some practice. If I practice, stretched out, use my legs a little more, I think I could get in the 90s and sit low 90s. But I was really trying to just kind of pump it in and make sure I threw strikes.
It's not easy. People think just lob it in there and get the inning over with. But everybody has pride and of course competitive juices flow. And then, like you say, not everybody has that Shane Robinson knuckleball. So it's
all I was thinking about was the other players on the field. I just didn't want guys to sit out there and be like, man, come on, stop trying to spot up, throw it down the middle, let him hit it. So I kept thinking that to myself, don't walk anybody. And that was probably the most nerve-wracking part of it. Yeah, got through it, baby.
So we're talking to Trevor Plouffe. We're wrapping up here on Midwest Swing Pod. I'm your host, Mike Berardino. Tom Schreier along for craft beer knowledge and other technical support. And of course, he's the co-founder of ZoneCoverage.com. We invite you to take a look, to subscribe as well to this podcast, and leave a review at iTunes, Spotify, any of your favorite podcast apps. Last thing, Trevor, you're 32 years old. You have had a nice run in the major leagues, but I wonder if you want to keep going. Joe's apparently at 35, ready to call it a career, but how much have you decided yet if you want to keep going? And if so, how do you envision that going?
I haven't 100% decided on anything. If you'd ask me now, right after the season, and being in AAA for most of the year, that wasn't where I wanted to be. So I'm leaning. You're asking me right now. I'm leaning towards not playing, but that could change. If I get that itch, I'm watching the postseason and start, get those competitive juices flowing again. I would think that there's a chance that I could go into spring training next year with a team and see if I could make the team out of spring training. I will say this: I will not go back to AAA again. So,
wow,
there's that little caveat there. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a different deal once you've been in the majors, and that showed your love of the game. I think that you did stick with it throughout this year, and through the Rangers and the Phillies, and I know you've always been a strong influence on your teammates. I'm sure those guys in both those organizations that you made an impact on this year. So I think the game's better for it when Trevor Plouffe's in it. But no matter what you do going forward, we wish you all the best. And whether that's, and we do look forward to the debut of a craft beer that you have helped concoct and perhaps name, and hopefully have a little ownership stake in. So, because those things can really take off. I think David Wright was an early adopter of vitamin water. I think he made more on vitamin water than he did playing baseball, and he did okay in baseball. So,
yeah, he did.
Anyway. All right. Thanks so much for the time, Trevor. All the best to you, and say hi to your family for us.
All right. Thank you, guys. Thanks for having me on.
All right. That was Trevor Plouffe, former Twins third baseman. Spent this year in the Rangers and Phillies organizations. And as Tom just showed, really quite a bit of knowledge, I'd say, Tom, on the craft beer scene around the nation.
Yeah.
And a guy that people should follow on Twitter. I bet he ends up doing a website or something. I mean, it's pretty cool to be in the early 30s and have played in the major leagues and have options in what you're going to do going forward. Just a good dude, always has been, and we missed having him around the Twins clubhouse here these last couple of years. Where do you see that going for him with with when you hear that kind of knowledge and detail on craft beer, Tom?
I think it's interesting. Again, it's kind of funny that his career path aligns with when the scene took off here, and certainly interesting. I didn't know Dan Glenn was contributing to a brewery. It's out in Minneapolis. I'll have to go check that out. And he's right. There is a mixed. There's certain places that are better atmosphere, worse beer. There's certain people or places not great beer, good atmosphere. Obviously, Surly Fulton would be two that would have both. I don't know a ton about the LA scene. I've been to one brewery in Santa Monica, and that would be a really small sample size. But I think it's interesting if he could bring his knowledge, certainly from here, but also from around the nation, and either contribute or maybe down the road he may want to open something up. But it seems like, given how many people live there and it seems to fit with the culture there, and at least the one I was at was pretty popular. Asking around, I think a lot of people go there. I think it'd be interesting if he could establish himself there, back home. The place obviously talked a lot about, big USC fan and all that. I think it'd be cool if he could open up a place around there or be a part of it.
I was a little surprised. Obviously we know about Perkins. He always got the most publicity in that clubhouse for his brewer knowledge and what he had done. But I had no idea. I don't know if you knew that they were in the back room through 2016. It sounds like teaching each other, doing experimental brews. Did you know that was happening in the back room? They have a lot of space back there.
No.
But it sounded like he had all the implements there to create these tasty concoctions, and that's sure more interesting than playing cards.
Yeah, dominoes, all that. Yeah, no, I think I was curious. I know people have tried the homebrew. Some people are successful. I'd say most of my friends who have done it, you'd maybe go blind drinking their first batch. So you always got to be careful with the first run around. But I know people who can do it successfully, and it's a little bit of just certainly there's probably a formula and all that, but a little bit of just trial and error. And I think it's fun. I mean, you think of ways that kind of these guys are humanized. Certainly beer is pretty universal, or relatively so. And I think I knew about Perkins. I didn't know about Plouffe, I guess, until he started tweeting about it recently.
Yeah, no, he's having fun with that. So it was good talking with Trevor. Didn't get a chance to ask him his because he had to run, but I wanted to ask him his thoughts on the postseason. But maybe I'll ask you. I'm not prepared with an overall prediction. I'll probably pull one out if you make me. But any thoughts on going into the postseason here? Sleeper team. I mean, it's so wide open. Really, even at 108. The one thing I can almost guarantee you is the 108 loss Red Sox team probably not going to win it, just because it doesn't happen that way in baseball.
Yeah, I anticipate something fun happening here. I think that given that you have 2 game 163s here, 2 teams who I thought would be contenders in the NL, I guess I'm less sold on the Braves, and so I really thought the Dodgers would be in there. I would say the Rockies surprised me in the sense that they're in the mix. I would say the Cardinals, we joke about, right? The cardiac Cardinals, I think they had like an 80% chance of being in like a week ago or something like that. Kind of going the opposite route. I think, it's kind of fun teams in the mix, a lot of surprises. You mentioned the 108 win, Red Sox. I kind of caught, anytime they're playing the Yankees, it tends to be on ESPN, and I caught it when I wasn't watching the Twins, and I'm pretty sold on them. I mean, I understand Astros are in the mix there. Indians have been there before. I still think that's the winner. In the NL, I've been telling everyone the Cubs, and we don't even know if the Cubs are really going to get a series here. So I'm more at a loss there. I guess I was inclined to say Cubs or Dodgers, but it would also be really fun if a team like the A's somehow pull off the magic again. I think if the Rockies somehow survive all this, I think sometimes it's fun just to have a spoiler, kind of a wild card, almost literally and figuratively. But man, I'm leaning very heavily towards the Red Sox. I guess they've been just a mind-blowingly good team this year.
You're going with the chalk. All right. Well, I'm going to say, again, I guess I can't retract it, but it just feels like it is going to be something a little goofy, and I don't think regular season win totals are a good predictor, and I do think the Indians have certainly plenty of pitching to do what they need to do, and have plenty of postseason experience. Maybe it's because we see them so much across the way covering the Twins these years, but it is also the 70th anniversary of their last World Series title. They're the market that's been waiting the longest. So how about an Indians-Brewers World Series?
Wow. Midwest, baby.
I do. Craig Counsell, Notre Dame man. Pat Murphy is bench coach, Notre Dame man. I covered Counsell with the Marlins way back. But the Brewers really added effectively. The A's, you can't get past how many they just remade their bullpen on the fly. But the Brewers were very stealthy there in their additions and persistent, and I thought they did good work. David Stearns and his team in the front office and the scouts and neighboring club. So a little Midwestern World Series for you. I just feel like some of those other things are Houston's. They're in there. They're all formidable in some way. I'm with you. The Braves. It's been a while. Lack of postseason experience. A lot of youth. I could see a quick exit there. That's going to be asking a lot to continue that. Others around them collapsed and made it easier for them in the NL East. But I'm going to go Brewers, Indians. I'm going to say the Indians win it all. I think that's a good place to stop for this week. Our thanks to Trevor Plouffe for joining us. Always good to catch up with Trevor Plouffe. He knows. I always voted for him for a media good guy.
Yeah.
And he never won it. I was always outvoted in the Twin Cities chapter, not because people didn't value him, but because there was always somebody else, usually Dozier, who was just a little more glib, I guess. But Trevor Plouffe was always a go-to guy when when things were going bad, really, and or there were mistakes. I never figured. And thinking Milwaukee, I never figured going up to him in Milwaukee after he made 2 errors that cost the team a game, and he was waiting. He was waiting there at his locker for me, and he answered the questions, and he understood, and where he didn't take it personally, and we always appreciated that about Trevor Plouffe. So follow him at Trevor Plouffe on Twitter, and it'll be interesting to see where he goes with his baseball career and beyond. So for Tom Schreier and producer Eric, this is Mike Berardino. You've been listening to Midwest Swing Pod, part of the Zone Coverage Podcast Network. Check us out at zonecoverage.com, and any of your favorite podcast apps. We invite you to download and leave a review at iTunes, Spotify, anywhere that you like to catch your podcast. We'll have another guest, another topic for you next week here at Midwest Swing Pod.